Welcome to Tickle Your Story Bones. Tickle Your Story Bones is my flagship storytelling program. And I have many different versions of the program under it. Because I work with diverse audiences, I believe that storytelling is not a common recipe that can be applied to various different organizations and environments. There's a lot of customization that needs to happen for storytelling to be truly effective. So whether I am working with teachers, whether I'm working with parents, whether I'm working with an entrepreneur, or whether I'm working with a corporate or a not-for-profit, the way I recommend storytelling be deployed is slightly different, right? This is one of my favorite quotes by Annette Simmons. Annette's books are really very useful. If you haven't really gone through her books on storytelling, I recommend you look at them. And she advocates the use of the fact that a fact will never move or change somebody's story. The fact that so many people are being affected is not going to make people come around and work or stand with you and your cause. Rather, it is the power of the story which is going to wrap the fact into a hard-hitting narrative that's going to make people connect with what you're saying. I want to ask you, and so I want you to sort of reflect, what is your story? Why do you do what you do? Why do you have a career in not-for-profit? And how has your work impacted your why? I want you to sort of very quickly internalize these questions and come up with a very brief story about yourself. What is storytelling? Storytelling is the art of using a story to communicate. That's what Manal did, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to use a story to communicate effectively to your listener that this is what who I am, or this is what who we are. Within the organizational space, every story should have a definite strategy. And that should build towards your greater organizational goals, because you as an individual may not be telling your personal stories of motivation, of empathy, of intent, of purpose, of commitment to the social entrepreneurship space or not-for-profit space, but by your actions, you may be exhibiting that in your organization some way or the other. But your organization, which has a large body of stakeholders to connect with, it's your job, it's our work to constantly share it so that people see and they experience and they understand how does each of your activity, how does each activity match with the overall organizational goal. And that's what storytelling does. Storytelling is not about using this one story that is going to tell about your organization. It's an ongoing process. And the story can be told in many different forms, in many different ways, in bite-sized information, or in an entire story, like the story of Padma that I told you. I had an entire story to tell, right? But what if I showed you a day in the life of Padma? Would that not be her story? I will not be able to bring in her past, present, and future. What if I showed you a picture of her traveling to Nepal? What if she shows us, the gifts that she's bought from for her nieces and nephews, and she holds them in her hand, and then you write your story underneath it, saying that Padma is ready to travel to Nepal she's carrying gifts for her nieces and nephews. These are the same nieces and nephews who she has been supporting in their education back home. And her family in Nepal depends on Padma's income back here in India. So is that not telling her story, right? So a story may not be in the classical narrative arc, which we will talk about a little later, but it can be little snippets which tell you that this is why it's important to empower a woman, to let her do what she's doing. So it can be a small part. What I recommend that every storyteller, especially in the organizational space, when we use stories, we have to have a strategy. We must ensure that every story counts, or it is providing let's say, support to the large narrative that we want to share about our organization. Therefore, your strategy should be to connect with your various stakeholders, to communicate the many things you want to communicate with them, and to convince them to take action. And that action can also be a like on social media, it can be sharing, it could be a donor request. It could be somebody where you're engaging with your audience that tell us about you. For example, all right. So what can storytelling do? Like the first activity that you just sort of worked over, look at all the kinds of possibilities. The why, the what, the how of your organization and its activities. Why does your organization do what it is doing? What does it do? What impact does it do? What change does it bring in people's life? And how does it do it? Right? What are the ground realities? Why is it important for you to be working in that space? What are the challenges that people face? What is the new fresh perspective that you are sharing that people are not, perhaps they're aware of it, but they don't engage with it? When you talk about it's the conflict in your story, really. When you have a story to tell, there is a conflict that you need to share. So is there a conflict that you're talking about? Because you are a problem solver. You are a catalyst in that story, a player in that story. You are impacting the lives of people whose lives you are working towards changing, right? So if you do not understand the region, the problems, the complexity, and you do not communicate it effectively to people, then it sort of, it does the job, right?
So, all right. So my story is that 15 years ago, a group of organizations started putting children into schools. They were working out there and they felt that child should be where they should belong, that is in school, they shouldn't be working. And that's how they started doing in different countries and reached over to India and had different strategies. And that's how we kind of now inform and make our audience aware that children should be in school, or school is the best place for children to work, and not in the fields, not in the chili farms, not in the cotton farms. So yeah, that's what we do. A very, very brief story in 60 seconds.
Yes, it is a story, but it is not tugging at my heart. It has to tug at my heart where I say that, oh, really? Tell me more. How many children?
It connects complete strangers. Through money, we build and we break. Money helps us fulfill our wishes. Some of us have a lot of money. Some of us have less. But money is a universal need for both individuals and businesses. Our interaction with money has transformed over the years.
Was there anything that you did not know before what the video told you about? You already know that, right?
Yes.
Yes. So did it come at you? It's like, yeah, ye to pata hai. I know this. Did a part of your brain said that? Were you moved to donate? Ask yourself that question. It's telling the story, but it is not doing anything. It has all the facts, all the data. It has beautiful visuals as well, just optimum visuals. The first half of the film where you're showing different people using money and all of that, I will skip through that because I'm like, oh yeah, I know this. These are all familiar things. But the moment the scene and scenery changes to people in Bangladesh, I suddenly wait and say, okay, who's this? Right. I think I know people like that. I know people like that. And I said, yeah, that's true. We have the money, they don't have the money. But is it still making me want to know and support them? No. Right. It is sort of...
No, I don't think there's a call to action. Yeah.
The call to action is missing. What else? I didn't show you the entire film.
Yes.
That is one thing. Because I just want to come to that point and sort of tell you that what has the film done till now and what is the ask. What has it even, it's like more than half of the film is done. Okay, it's a 2-minute 49-second video. And I've played 1-minute 49-second already. Okay, so it's more than half the film gone. If it still hasn't done anything to me, then the film is not good. It has a purpose, which is that, okay, it's an education, information, kind of a data. I need to push out the data and the facts. But is there a definite tug? No. As of now, there isn't. So where is the tug? I found another film. This has subtitles, so please watch from the beginning. Okay?
বাবা শব্দের প্রতি আমি একটা আবেগ আছে আমার, কারণ আমার ছোট ছোট বাবা মারা গেছে তো, বাবা শব্দের প্রতি আমার একটা আবেগ বেশি। আমার ছেলে ওই যে ওর 3 মাস 4 মাস যখন বয়স হয়েছে তখন থেকে ওই এই বাবা টাটা হাতে দাগাইতে, প্রতিদিন আমার টাটা দেয়। আমি বলেছি বাবা টাটা, বাবা টাটা, কারণ ও মনে করেন আর একদিকে ফিরে ও কিছু বলতেছে না। আমি মানে বাসা থেকে সামনের সিঁড়ি থেকে নামছি, বাবা টাটা, ও বলতেছে না।
Is high on emotions.
Very high on emotions. Why? And what is it still? What's the purpose of this story? What do you think is the strategy for this story?
There's
Feeling the
always a
pressure.
way of coming around and bringing that necessary step in the society where, you know, there is inclusivity. And as a person who has suffered, he's there bridging the gap somewhere. You know, he's there to help out. You know, that's what I strongly felt. He didn't back out, that he lost his leg and, you know, he cannot do anything further and he cannot be of any use. But then he thrived. He thrived in spite of the accident. He thrived and he's able to extend a helping hand in whatever ways he can.
And there is a definite call to action in the end as well.
Yes.
What are we doing about inclusion? What are we doing
Yes.
about?
What are we doing?
What are we doing? So definitely financial inclusion is still the key message here, but it's being done differently. It is being, it's your listener, but for you, it could be your audience, it could be the various stakeholders. You need to identify what are the many kinds of stakeholders are there out in the world. They're donors, your funders, your policymakers, your program of managers. So identify them as your primary, secondary, tertiary, and your unknown listeners, because you do never know who's listening to your stories or watching your stories or coming to you for information, right? So who are they? And I want you to do this while we are doing it, okay? Identify your listeners. So make a list of, let's say, listener number 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Forget about whether they're your primary, secondary, tertiary, or unknown, because that's about understanding that this is the kind of story we want to tell. Who is the primary for this? Who is the secondary for this? Who is the tertiary for this?
Ritu, I want to ask you, why do you say do not make it prescriptive?
I never say I say do not make it prescriptive, because then you recommend that there's only one way of solving a problem. There could be many possible solutions to a problem. You have found one. Should it be the same for others? May not be. Right? That's the reason why. Okay.
Could you explain little bit more by what you mean by narrative arc?
So narrative arc is the hero's journey. Every story begins with a place and a setting. Who are these people? Where do they come from? What is their life like? And today I'm going to be telling you a story about one particular character or a group of people, right? Like in Rakib's story that you watched, you saw that this is the person who has suffered and he's part of an organization which has a larger purpose, right? And it also established where is this story coming from. It's coming from a place called Bula in Bangladesh. It's clearly identifying. You also see his home, you see his family, you see his office, you go and travel with him. So you're traveling with him in that story, right? All the places, the story setting is changing. He is also part of a bigger story of the organization that he supports, that he works in, that it is impacting other people's lives. His personal life has also been affected. He's sharing that his transformation has come. And he's also talking about how he's enabling others' lives to change as well. And then because you travel with him, you go to different places, different people, and what do they do?
Sure thing. So this is a project that is actually being implemented in the Philippines for one of our indigenous communities. And it's a partnership with the private company Signify or Philips. And we're distributing these solar powered lights to various communities that don't have lighting and thus suffer from a lot of different complications. They're unable to work when it gets dark or if there's unfortunate weather, and it gets dangerous, particularly because they live in mountainous areas. So together with Philips, our organization is distributing these lights and installing them for the indigenous communities in the Philippines.
Okay, now, if I was to tell the story, I would tell the story of this one woman who's holding these lights and she's looking like she's smiling from year to year, right? I want to know why is her life, how and why is her life going to change right now? What change will that one light bring to her life? Can I get a photograph of her installing it? Can I get a photograph of her standing underneath it? And can I get a sense of her setting? Say, for example, her name is X, and X lives in Y, right? Like she said, in a mountainous area. Every day, X had to walk for, or whatever, her yard is these many square feet or these many square meters wide. And from her house to the end of the road, there is pitch darkness. And at the end of the road, she needs to wait to get her, get her cattle back, or needs to wait for her children to get back from school or whatsoever, right? I have to identify what is she being able to do now because of that light. Because I don't know what is her story, and it's been generalized that yes, this light is going to help people have light, access to light, and how many people it's going to access. I get that sense, but I don't know what is their life like without electricity, without having proper lighting, right? So if I can see that, then it's a great story for me. Because as of now, this story, what it does is that, okay, we had some funds, we got, a donor, and a donor has benefited X number of people in a certain community. But it still does not show me the problem. By saying that there is a problem, we are not really addressing a problem. We are just saying there is a problem and we solved it. Does that make sense, Gabriel?
Yes, tons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. No hard feelings, but just for what I wanted to say is that there's a scope, and I want to see that story. I want to see how has it helped them, or what was their life before, and what will it be after, right? Because even if she's not installed it, I want to get a sense of what she could not do, the challenge, the problem, and how has it been brought there. Now, again, when you're telling a story, you may get a little walkthrough of a house or that community or that village. How many houses are there, right? What does it look like during the day? What happens when the sun dips? You can make an entire film, right?
Well, alongside, you gave us a holistic point of view of how we can turn our stories around and make them more impactful, and show how we move the needle. Number two, but what's important is, for example, if I was recommending you to a friend at Cry, I was able to, you showed me very properly that if in a generic setup, you can bring this magic of yours. So if you're given, if you know the organization and your team knows about the organization, you'll be much more specific when it comes to, figuring out a layout for your program and then deliver it, which, impacts the organization. Like, for example, if at Cry, you can be a facilitator for their volunteering team because they are the ones who are in the fields very often, and also for the field managers, like you mentioned in the beginning of the program, because field people across the country are talking to the grassroots level partners as well for a grant making organization like CRI. Those are the people who are the mouthpieces for the entire team at CRI. Most importantly, the comms department. So you could definitely train them to be a good bridge between, stories on ground and how they get translated via, the communications function. So those would be my 2-3 points of recommendation. That it can be a very specific, customized plan for a particular organization, stakeholder, and the kind of stories that they want to tell.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to also understand, because I can give you an overview, but what will matter is how well you implement it. So, and it is going to be still very wide. You have to contextualize it. I said that right in the beginning. Please contextualize whatever I'm saying within your organization. You will find enough words to go with it. And since my commitment is to help you with one story, definitely you will get that as a rubric to work on your other stories.
Correct.
Gabriel, would you like to share something?
Sure thing. One thing that I want to absolutely agree with Anjali on is that I'd love for my colleagues to participate in a workshop like this and to really understand the importance of communication and how essential it is in the crafting of the story to effectively deliver our projects. I mean, it's a key component in everything we do. Like you mentioned earlier, ensuring that the message is clear to everyone, including our internal stakeholders and the people implementing our projects. Our end goal is that we're all striving for the same mission. So I understand, though, that that's one of the activities that you have indicated for moving forward, like how do we involve your organization and things like that. So yeah, that's something that I'm definitely taking away that I want to share with others.
Super. I always say, did I infect you with the spirit of storytelling? I think I have. Okay, let's hear it from the three folks at WWF. Manal, I can only see your window up. Okay, so maybe I just spotlight you and you can go up. Represent your team.
Yeah, so I guess, yeah, definitely the workshop was very helpful. And we really need to revisit the old recent comps that we have done, and we have some missing blocks out there. So we'll fill them up. And going forward, definitely the medium will identify properly and what story has to be communicated and how that narrative, even if we need some extra posts to be done out there, we'll do that. We'll block extra posts to do that.
Do you recommend this program to other not-for-profits? And if yes, then why?
Definitely, I'm going to get some of my teammates to attend the next session whenever that is happening.
All right, fair enough. Thank you so much. That'll be good. Garima.
So, first of all, it was a really great session. And when I recommended to other people in my own space, which is majorly NGOs and civil society, I would not say what I'm not for. I'm not for profits. What I'm for. So when I say what I'm for is like there is so much of stories out there in front of us on the ground with the community that we work with. And I think today what I learned is that how do we bring it out properly with all of that emotions, all of that which kinds of create an impact, and it adds to the body of work that we are doing. So like, for example, I'm working with children. This organization that I've joined is like maybe 2 years old and I've joined in, but I've been working in this sector for 10 years. So I know how in the past NGOs really struggle with bringing up the right type of content. They have it with them, it's already there, but do not have the means to kind of give it a shape, which I think storytelling is a very, very nice medium. And I think we all are like, we all love to listen to stories. We all love hearing stories. I think, and it's a great medium to convey your things to others.